Due to a variety of factors like new video game consoles and your run-of-the-mill global pandemic, a whole lot of games got delayed in 2022. That kind of sucked in 2022, but it means 2023 is going to be absolutely bonkers in terms of video game releases. Here are a whole bunch of the games that we know are coming out in 2023, and it's not even all of them. Let's get to it. The year kicks off with Fire Emblem Engage on Switch. This is the follow-up to Three Houses, and this time around you'll be able to summon or engage characters from the series past, including OG protagonist and Smash staple Marth. You can put a ring on it January 20th, so save the date. So let me get this straight. The team behind Final Fantasy 15 developed a new RPG that's not what I would call a Final Fantasy game. It's a freaking PS5 console exclusive that's also coming to PC, and oh yeah, I'm talking about Forspoken. Yeah. Okay, that is a game that's out this month. It was supposed to be out in May, and then in October, and it might actually come out on January 24th, so check it out. If the Callisto Protocol didn't satisfy your need for deep space survival horror in which combat tips are awkwardly written on the wall in blood, well, you can relive the original Dead Space with Dead Space Remake. The entire game has been recreated painstakingly in the Frostbite engine, and it shakes things up a bit with a disgusting new system which is called peeling that apparently lets you mutilate those necromorphs down to the individual bones and tendons. That's horrible, and it's also on new gen and PC on the 27th. On February 10th, it's back to school season in the Wizarding World, and Hogwarts Legacy lets you live out the ultimate fantasy of attending Harry Potter's alma mater. Just imagine the thrill of paying out the ass for textbooks that try to bite you, the least wheelchair-accessible stairs in the history of schools, and your entire academic career being determined by a guidance counselor who is a talking hat. But hey, at least you can re-roll if it puts you in Hufflepuff. If you wish Monster Hunter was a little more like Fortnite, keep an eye out for Wild Hearts, yet another fantastical world for you to explore. This one is inspired by feudal Japan, imagine that. It's developed by Omega Force, the studio behind the Dynasty Warriors series and its myriad Muso spin-offs, and if the fact that EA is publishing worries you, bear in mind that Activision published Sekiro. Will you heart Wild Hearts? See for yourself when it's out in the wild on February 17th. If you're not totally sick of hearts after eating a box of Valentine's candy while playing Wild Hearts, on the 21st, Atomic Heart can get your blood pumping. This is the single-player first-person shooter with a Soviet aesthetic that looks a bit like Fallout's paleo-futurism, but from the other side of the Iron Curtain. However, its combat and weirdness levels seem more in line with BioShock. If you're looking for something to pass the time until Ken Levine's Judas, this might be worth checking out, and it's on everything but Switch. On February 22nd, Sony is for all intents and purposes launching a brand new console with the PlayStation VR 2, which will have a pile of launch titles to go with it, and at the summit of this molehill of a day one releases, you'll find the Horizon spin-off Call of the Mountain, which promises to be a full-length VR game, maybe not as long as the flagship Horizon games, but definitely more meaty than your average virtual reality experience. That's exclusively on PSVR, which is exclusively on PS5. The name Company of Heroes might suggest a sandwich chain like Subway or Quiznos, but rest assured, Company of Heroes 3 is still a World War II RTS. In addition to two unique campaigns in Northern Africa and Italy, this one also adds new gameplay features like a dynamic campaign map and a tactical pause, which sounds great for when the real-time combat gets a little too real. That comes to PC on February 23rd. Sons of the Forest is the direct descendant of the hit woodland survival game with a heavy emphasis on survival. While a lot of us would prefer to be stuck on a proverbial desert island with a Steam Deck or an attractive celebrity, this one will see you foraging for supplies and braving the elements while also fending off a horrible cave system full of terrifying mutant cannibals. Sounds lovely. That's on PC. If that's too scary and you'd rather repeatedly kill some adorable astronauts through a reckless trial and error approach to aeronautics, Kerbal Space Program 2 lets you do that and lots more. That hits early access on PC on February 24th, but the developers promise custom bases, multiplayer, mod support, and of course console versions down the road. If you yearn for the simpler days of classic turn-based RPGs with beautiful pixel art and Dickensian campaigns, or if you just thought the 2018 game Octopath Traveler was pretty cool, well, you're in luck because Octopath Traveler hits PC, Switch, and both PlayStations also on February 24th. On March 1st, the day before hits PC, and before your eyes glaze over at the idea of yet another post-apocalyptic zombie survival game with base building and survival elements, get a load of these graphics. A lot of games on this list were delayed due to the pandemic, but developer Fnatic pushed this one so they could switch engines from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5, and it looks like that was a smart move because it's the second most wishlisted game on Steam after Hogwarts Legacy. That's on PC with plans for new-gen console versions later on. Wo Long Fallen Dynasty is the latest project from Team Ninja, and it looks to continue the long tradition of kicking your ass repeatedly, which began with Ninja Gaiden and the Neo games, but this one's set in China's Three Kingdoms period, but it's got a grisly dark fantasy twist. That is on all the stuff that isn't made by Nintendo. Allegedly, Skull and Bones is finally coming out, but I will believe it when I see it. This is Ubisoft's multiplayer pirate game, which supposedly began as an Assassin's Creed Black Flag spin-off, and at one point was apparently like For Honor with boats, but since then it's taken the shape of something much more like Sea of Thieves, and it's been delayed about, well, my entire career. Anyway, that drops anchor on new gen and PC March 9th, allegedly. To make up for the extremely long wait for Bayonetta 3, Platinum Games is rewarding fans of the bespectacled Umber Witch with a brand new installment less than a year later. Bear in mind, it's a pretty big shift, ditching the realistic third-person action for a top-down adventure with a cuter storybook aesthetic, but it definitely looks more fun than waiting 5 years for a sequel. That is on Switch, March 17th. Still on March 17th is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, the follow-up to Fallen Order, which sees the return of an older and hairier Cal Kestis who will undoubtedly have some new tricks up his sleeve. Technical hiccups aside, Respawn knocked it out of the park with the first game, so hopefully this continues this streak. That is on new-gen consoles and PC. What are you buying? Well, on March 24th, Resident Evil 4 Remake probably. Between the recent mainline entries and the last two remakes, Capcom probably hasn't had the trust of fans like this since, well, probably RE4's original release, and a modern remake of one of the best, albeit most divisive games in the entire series, with a few modern adjustments, seems like it'll be a pretty good time. That's on both PlayStations, Xbox Series X, and PC. Crime Boss Rockhay City is a brand new first-person shooter that came totally out of left field, and we don't know much about it other than it's got a star-studded cast, which is mostly Michaels and Danny's. Specifically, Rooker, Madsen, Glover, and Trejo. It also has Kim Basinger, Vanilla Ice, and Chuck Norris. What's the gameplay like? Great question. That's on PC March 28th and consoles someday. Before there was BioShock, there was System Shock, and this is yet another classic that's getting a full modern remake, and if you're having deja vu, that might be because this got kickstarted way back in 2016, and sometime in March you'll finally get to play it. That's on everything that doesn't say Nintendo on it. Dead Island 2 has had a long and rocky development, and on April 28th it is finally rising from its grave. LA is infested with zombies, and you gotta go kill them. What do you kill them with? All kinds of stuff, including stuff that's glued to other stuff that you glued there on a crafting bench. That's coming out April 28th, once again on everything but Switch. But hey, Switch owners are going to be just fine because on May 12th, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom finally drops. Breath of the Wild was such a genre-redefining watershed game that the wait for a follow-up has felt like a lifetime, and that might be because this has been one of, if not the longest breaks between Zelda installments in the entire series' history, so let's hope it lives up to everybody's sky-high expectations. It's been a very long wait for a new game from Rocksteady, the studio that gave us the Batman Arkham series, and while it's set in the same universe, Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League looks to be a pretty huge departure. This time, players can get down with their bad selves as Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, King Shark, and/or Deadshot. That's on new gen and PC. Street Fighter VI looks to be maybe the biggest shift for the series since its jump from 2 to 2.5D back in Street Fighter IV, but this is much more than just a visual leap. It's adding a character creator and a whole hub city for you to explore and hang out in and presumably do some street fighting in, but don't worry, as far as fighting goes, it's not reinventing the wheel, and the buzz for this among fighting game diehards seems very positive. That's on PS4, PS5, Series X and S, and PC. Diablo 4 has been in the works for a very long time, but it sounds like it's going to be worth the wait. With a color palette that's far more in line with Diablo 2 than 3, it is a clear return to proper dark fantasy, and its gorgeous world is wide open for you to explore while slaying demons and hoarding loot. That's out on 6/6 for everything but Switch. Like many other games on this list, Final Fantasy XVI is a massive departure from its immediate predecessor. This time it's scrapping the futuristic elements and returning to good old-fashioned medieval fantasy, and if you're tired of open worlds, rest assured this looks to have a much more focused area-based approach to level design, but combat is still going to be in real time. That one's exclusively on PS5 for the immediate future. Forza Motorsport gives Microsoft's flagship racing title a soft reboot for its first dedicated foray into exclusively new-gen territory. This will undoubtedly be a real showcase of what the Series S and X are capable of graphically, and those sexy anime ladies you plastered all over your tricked-out Subaru will look sexier than ever, and so will the Subaru. That's on Series X and S and PC sometime in the spring. A whole bunch of games have been given the extremely broad release window of first half of the year, so here are some games you're going to be playing probably sooner or later. Hollow Knight received universal acclaim, including IGN staff voting it the best Metroidvania of all time, despite an utter lack of Metroids and Vanias. A lot of people are dying to get their hands on Silksong, which is the immediate follow-up that puts you in control of Hornet, the enemy-turned-ally from the first game, who has a totally unique moveset. Fans of Homeworld 2 have been waiting 2 decades for a sequel, and they won't have to wait that much longer. Homeworld 3 takes place even further in the future and will shake up the deep space RTS formula with the addition of terrain that'll allow for cover. It's still in space, mind you, but there's just a lot of shit floating around up there now. If you love the games that Arcane has put out, like Dishonored, Prey, and Deathloop, and you hate vampires, boy do I have the game for you that you probably already knew about. Redfall will have you staking your claim in a New England town filled with bloodsuckers, and this time around it's co-op, so up to 3 friends can join in on the fun. Stalker 2: Heart of Chernobyl is the long-awaited sequel to the 2007 post-apocalyptic survival horror game based on the Tarkovsky film of the same name, based on the classic novel Roadside Picnic, and its development has certainly not been a picnic, roadside, or otherwise. In addition to all the other hurdles of developing a AAA video game through the pandemic, Ukraine-based GSC World also had to put things on hold while their country was being bombed and invaded by Russian forces. This is supposed to hit the new Xboxes and PC sometime in the first half of the year, but I think of all the games on this list, I don't think anybody's gonna be mad if they need more time. Starfield is shaping up to be Skyrim in space. And before you tell me that's a stupid, reductive way of describing it, I'm quoting Todd Howard, so take that. Anyway, in space, no one can hear you dragon shout, but you can probably go collect some cheese wheels on the moon or on one of the hundreds of other planets in this game. That's on all the new Xboxes and PC. If you like deep space stuff, but Starfield sounds dauntingly expansive, well, there's also The Expanse, a Telltale series, which is a narrative adventure set in the universe of the hit TV show, and that's on PC and consoles. If you think narrative adventures are a novel idea, well, it's time to unravel a new story with Alan Wake 2, which sees the return of Remedy's author-protagonist, but this time around promises to be a proper survival horror. If you're one of the many people who spent thousands of hours hunting and crafting and riding dinosaurs in Ark, you may have thought to yourself at some point, this game is great, but it needs Vin Diesel. Well, you weren't the only one, because Vin Diesel felt the same way, and after playing a shitload of the first game, he's not only starring in the sequel, he's also involved with its development as Studio Wildcard's president of creative convergence, which means he's also executive producing an Ark animated series. Sure, why not? If you think giant robots are f***ing awesome, you're correct. And FromSoft's beloved mecha series Armored Core is back with its 6th long-overdue installment, Fires of Rubicon. What took so long? Well, FromSoft was busy establishing a little genre called Soulsborne with a trilogy of Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and of course Elden Ring. There's absolutely no reason to expect Armored Core to be anything like those games, and according to the developers, it isn't really, but considering those games are what amassed FromSoft its devoted following, I imagine those fans are being taken into consideration at least somewhat. That's coming to everything. Another AC franchise getting at least one new entry this year is Assassin's Creed. Longtime fans might be relieved to hear that after the last few games have veered heavily into action RPG territory, Assassin's Creed Mirage is going to scale things back and return to the original game's design pillars of stealth, parkour, and assassinations. The setting? 9th century Baghdad. The first Hades was a smash hit in 2020. Its fast-paced roguelike action and slick visuals earned it a spot on countless best-of lists, as well as nabbing IGN's Game of the Year award. While we're always happy to see Supergiant Games go back to the drawing board to try something completely new and experimental, we're also thrilled that there's more Hades on the way, which will undoubtedly have plenty of surprises in store. Pinocchio fans, if such a thing actually exists, have had a pretty busy couple of years. Hot on the trail of Disney and Del Toro's feature film takes on that dishonest but lovable wooden boy comes Lies of P. This action RPG retells the original 19th century fairy tale in the form of a fast-paced action RPG a la Bloodborne, and yes, you'll be able to tell lies. Marvel's Spider-Man was one of the best-selling games on PS4, so unsurprisingly, it's getting a follow-up, but the sequel will be exclusive to PS5. After seeing how much Insomniac Games was able to do with the new hardware and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, we are dying to see what new tricks our friendly neighborhood wall crawler has in store for us in the sequel. The Cops and Robbers co-op shooter Payday 2 gets a long-awaited sequel a full decade after the last game released. This time around, players can expect larger-scaled heist, as developers have described the setting as, quote, a living enormous representation of New York City. Another series getting a sequel after a decade of nothing, unless you count the mobile game, is Pikmin. We basically haven't seen anything from this game outside of a 30-second trailer, but we have a sneaking suspicion that it will involve some Pikmin. I don't know, what do you know about this game? They haven't shown us anything. A whole bunch of beloved horror movie licenses have found new life in the asymmetrical multiplayer genre, and joining the ranks of Friday the 13th, Predator, Evil Dead, and Killer Clowns from Outer Space is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Based squarely in the era of the 1974 slasher classic, the game will have one team playing as meddling teens who have to, not get murdered, and the other team will be playing as not just Leatherface, but his entire messed up family too. Considering how much Gears of War copied Warhammer 40k's homework, it's only fair that they get to follow suit, and the 2011 third-person shooter Space Marine clearly understood the assignment. Now, we're finally getting a sequel continuing the adventures of Ultramarines Captain Titus, who will eviscerate a sea of screeching Tyranids, and this one sounds pretty cool. And finally, for this list, not for all the games coming out, is The Wolf Among Us 2. The reformed Telltale Games is finally returning to the Fables universe to continue Big B's story. This new game picks up 6 months after the last one, and if you need a refresher, that's totally understandable because the last game was released a decade ago. And there you have it. That's a whole bunch of games that are coming out in 2023, and it's not even all of them because a whole bunch of them we don't even know about quite yet. But I know a cool website you can keep an eye on if you like video games. It's called IGN.com. 2023 is going to be a doozy. I'll see you around.